Episode 9, Counting Trolleys. How many bags do you have? 3 renowned scientists, Papaia, Banani, Ravioli, and their assistant Igor work at the Nasal Observatory. Papaia remembers that their flight for the conference is in 2 hours. With their bags, too many, open and broken, they create chaos wherever they go. The scientists have arrived at the airport. We're at the airport where the 4 are in line for check-in. Finally, it's Papaia's turn. Assistant. Good morning. Passports and tickets, please. Papaia hands over the documents to the assistant. Assistant. How many bags do you have? Papaia. We haven't counted them yet. Papaia, counting the bags. There should be 20. Igor. Wait a minute. Papaia, the illustrious scientist who should be able to calculate the distance between galaxies, is having trouble counting to 20. Imagine what happens when he has to do complicated calculations like those for the shuttle launch. Maybe Nasal should reconsider Papaia's role and cancel a couple of missions for a checkup. That's why as a kid I never saw myself as a future astronaut. Assistant. I'm sorry, but I can't check in 20 bags for 4 people. Papaia. We can pay for the excess. Assistant. Let me see the ticket. Let's see what I can do. Papaia. Here you go. Igor. Papaia, why don't you try putting them one inside the other? Oh, I forgot. The bags don't have an inside because they're open. A small quiz. 3 renowned scientists, Papaia, Banani, Ravioli, and their assistant Igor, work at the Nasal Observatory. Ravioli accidentally bought a book, which turns out to be very interesting. We are at the airport. While waiting to complete check-in, they are talking about Ravioli's book. Banani, do you have any more evidence for the second fact? Ravioli. Besides Paul's testimony in the oral tradition, written tradition also confirms the second fact. Banani, what sources are there? Ravioli. First of all, we have the 4 Gospels. Banani. Yes, we said those are historical texts too. Ravioli. Yes, and as we saw earlier, we can consider them independent sources, written just a few decades after Jesus' death. Igor. And now there's a little game for you. Ravioli and Banani are going to miss their flight. What will they do? A. Look for a solution to the luggage problem. B. Worry that they won't be able to travel or will have to leave some bags behind. C. Or talk about Ravioli's book. I see you've guessed too. The answer is C. Naturally, as if there's nothing better to talk about. The written tradition. 3 renowned scientists, Papaia, Banani, Ravioli, and their assistant Igor work at the Nasal Observatory. Ravioli accidentally bought a book, which turns out to be very interesting. We are at the airport. While waiting to complete check-in, they are talking about Ravioli's book. Banani. Okay, what else do we have? Ravioli. Church Fathers. Clement of Rome and Polycarp confirm it, writing in 95 and 110. Banani. The second point, you mean? Ravioli. Yes, and the transformation of the disciples is also documented. Banani. Transformation? Ravioli. The disciples were transformed by what they believed to be an encounter with the risen Jesus. From a position of fear that led them to abandon Jesus, deny him, and hide, the disciples moved to a position of courage, in which they publicly proclaim Jesus' resurrection, despite the dangers associated with it. Banani. We had said that, initially, the disciples were also Orthodox Jews, and would never have had the courage to abandon their principles, unless for a good reason. Ravioli. Yes, and this transformation is documented not only by Luke in Acts, but also by various ancient authors, such as Clement of Rome, a contemporary of the apostles, who recorded the martyrdom of Peter and Paul, Ignatius, Polycarp, Dionysius of Corinth, Tertullian, Origen, all of whom unanimously confirmed that the disciples suffered for the gospel. Igor. One day I'll write a book as an eyewitness too. In fact, in the history of aviation, no one has ever seen such an unbelievably clumsy journey. Episode 10, The Click of Regrets. Only that? 3 renowned scientists, Papaia, Banani, Ravioli, and their assistant Igor, work at the Nasal Observatory. Papaia remembers that the flight for the conference is in 2 hours. With their bags, too many, open and broken, they create chaos wherever they go. The scientists have arrived at the airport. We are at the airport where Papaia and the others are anxiously waiting for the assistant, who is checking the flight tickets. Banani, I can't wait to get to the conference. Ravioli, and I can't wait to hurry up so I can get my snack from the vending machine. Igor, surely for Ravioli, the most important part of the trip. Assistant, excuse me, Mr. Papaia, but what you gave me is just a reservation. Papaia, oops, that's right. Now I remember I forgot to pay at the end. Igor, no problem, we can always hitchhike on the runway. Maybe a plane will stop. Papaia's insistence. 3 renowned scientists, Papaia, Banani, Ravioli, and their assistant Igor work at the Nasal Observatory. Papaia remembers that the flight for the conference is in 2 hours. With their bags, too many open and broken, they create chaos wherever they go. Papaia has discovered that he forgot to pay for the ticket online, just at the moment of check-in at the airport. We are at the check-in counter, where the assistant is explaining to Papaia that they cannot board. Assistant, I'm sorry, but without a ticket, I cannot check you in. You need to go to the ticket counter first. Papaia begs the assistant to let them board, but of course, she cannot let them board without a ticket. Igor, does Papaia really think he can travel without a ticket? Or does he think low cost means free? Papaia, please, ma'am. It's for something very important. We'll miss our flight. Assistant, I've already told you that I cannot board you without a ticket. Now, kindly step aside because the line needs to keep moving. Igor, sarcastic. Please, can we pay on the way back? Deaf in one ear. 3 renowned scientists, Papaia, Banani, Ravioli, and their assistant Igor work at the Nasal Observatory. Papaia remembers that the flight for the conference is in 2 hours. With their bags, too many open and broken, they create chaos wherever they go. Papaia has discovered that he forgot to pay for the ticket online, just at the moment of check-in at the airport. We are at the check-in counter, where the assistant is explaining to Papaia that they cannot board. Meanwhile, Banani, who is deaf in one ear, hasn't heard anything of the conversation, and is stacking the bags one on top of the other on the conveyor belt, thinking that's the way it's done. Ravioli, look, Banani, the bags go one at a time on the belt. Banani, but don't they need to weigh them all? This way it's faster, right? Ravioli, well, now that I think about it, you're right. Maybe the other travelers should do like you. You're a practical guy. Igor, like eating salami and Nutella on a fish sandwich. After all, doesn't it all end up in the stomach in the end? Explosive luggage. 3 renowned scientists, Papaia, Banani, Ravioli, and their assistant Igor, work at the Nasal Observatory. Papaia remembers that the flight for the conference is in 2 hours. With their bags, too many open and broken, they create chaos wherever they go. Papaia has discovered that he forgot to pay for the ticket online, just at the moment of check-in at the airport. We are at the check-in counter, where the assistant is explaining to Papaia that they cannot board. Papaia keeps insisting, and the assistant starts losing patience. Assistant, listen, I can't block the whole line to solve your problem. I've already told you what to do. You need to understand that there are other people like you who need to travel. Some passengers in line start complaining loudly. Papaia, but if we waste more time, we'll miss the flight. Don't you understand? Assistant, I'm sorry, but if you don't leave right now, I'll have to call security. Suddenly, a thud attracts everyone's attention. Their luggage is opened again, this time on the conveyor belt. Assistant, hands in hair. Oh no, look at that mess. Banani, no problem, I've got this. Banani jumps onto the conveyor belt to fix the situation. Assistant, hey you, get off there. That's a restricted area. Banani, just a second. I've already gathered everything, I just need to close this suitcase. Igor, why don't you stick some stickers on it while you're at it? Experts in conferences, 3 renowned scientists, Papaia, Banani, Ravioli, and their assistant Igor work at the Nasal Observatory. Papaia remembers that the flight for the conference is in 2 hours. With their luggage, too many, open and broken, they create chaos wherever they go. At the check-in, Papaia forgot to pay for the ticket, and Banani created chaos with the luggage, which opened on the conveyor belt. We are at the check-in counter, where Banani is trying to close the luggage that is opened, spilling into a restricted area. Banani refuses to leave the restricted area, and the assistant calls security. Banani is stopped and nearly arrested. The luggage is once again with them, completely open and spilled on the floor. Other travelers watch them curiously, while Papaia is trying to persuade the security guard to let them go. Security guard, do you realize what you've done? Papaia, please, Mr. Security. We need to catch our flight to the conference. Security guard, I don't care about your conference. Who do you think you are? Now I'm going to give you a nice fine. Igor, who do we think we are? Mr. Security, let me think for a second. Conference experts? No, definitely not that. But go ahead, arrest us all. At least when they take us to jail, Papaia can say he succeeded at getting us to travel for free. The third fact, 3 renowned scientists, Papaia, Banani, Ravioli, and their assistant Igor, work at the Nasal Observatory. Ravioli accidentally bought a book that turns out to be very interesting. We are at the airport after an unfortunate incident with the luggage. Banani and Ravioli are discussing Ravioli's book. Banani, what's the third fact? Ravioli, the third fact is that the death, resurrection, and divinity of Jesus were preached right from the beginning by the early church. Banani, but we already mentioned this earlier. Ravioli, exactly. We saw that in 1 Corinthians 15, Paul mentions a creed from oral tradition. This creed lists several groups of eyewitnesses, still alive at the time, ready to confirm they saw the risen Jesus. Banani. And scholars date this creed to no more than 5 years after Jesus' crucifixion. Ravioli. Exactly, I see you're following the reasoning well. Igor, now all that's left is to figure out why Banani thought that stacking one suitcase on top of another at check-in would count as a single piece of luggage. Timeline. 3 renowned scientists, Papaia, Banani, Ravioli, and their assistant Igor, work at the Nasal Observatory. Ravioli accidentally bought a book that turns out to be very interesting. We are at the airport after an unfortunate incident with the luggage. Banani and Ravioli are discussing Ravioli's book. Banani, the calculation is simple. Paul, also known as Saul, begins persecuting Christians and then heads to Damascus. Ravioli, but why does he go to Damascus? That's an important question. Banani, he wanted to arrest a group of Christians in that city, right? Ravioli, exactly. But the real issue is, what bothered Paul so much that it pushed him to take that trip? Banani, maybe the preaching about the resurrection was already circulating before his conversion? Ravioli, we can't be sure, but we can suppose that what disturbed Paul was precisely the spread of these testimonies about the resurrection. Banani, until during that trip, Paul converts. Ravioli, and 3 years later, he meets Peter and James in Jerusalem. Banani, so there are 2 possibilities. Either Paul receives this oral tradition immediately in Damascus, or he receives it 3 years later, during the 15 days spent with Peter in Jerusalem. Ravioli. Doing the math, Paul's conversion happened at most 2 years after the crucifixion. If we add the 3 years before his trip to Jerusalem, we get a maximum of 5 years. Banani. This means that the resurrection was being preached no more than 5 years after the cross. So it was the heart of Christian preaching from the very beginning. Igor. Doing the math, when we left, there were only 2 hours left before the flight. If we add the time lost with the luggage and the disastrous check-in, we get a maximum of 5 minutes before the plane takes off without us. Eyewitnesses, 3 renowned scientists, Papaia, Banani, Ravioli, and their assistant Igor, work at the Nasal Observatory. Ravioli accidentally bought a book that turns out to be very interesting. We are at the airport after an unfortunate incident with the luggage. Banani and Ravioli are discussing Ravioli's book. Ravioli. Exactly. Also, we know that Paul wrote his letters just a few years after Jesus' death. If the resurrection had been a fabrication, he would never have mentioned this creed stating that over 500 people had seen the risen Jesus. Banani. Indeed, anyone who doubted could have verified it for themselves. Ravioli. In addition to these creeds, we also have the Book of Acts, written by Luke, which reports the apostles' preaching. And in these preachings, the resurrection is always at the heart of the message. Banani. If the resurrection were just a legend, how do you explain all of this? Igor is left speechless. Then he starts imitating Banani. Igor. Ravioli. These trips with Papaia are so boring. Nothing ever happens. Always the same things, falling downstairs, falling on the bus, trying to fly for free, blowing up luggage in a restricted area. Thank goodness there's Ravioli's book to talk about. Anyway, I don't know if the resurrection is a legend. What I know for sure is that in this airport, these scientists and their luggage will certainly become an urban legend.